If I could speak all the languages of earth and of angels, but didn't love others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I had the gift of prophecy, if I understood all God's secret plans and possessed all his knowledge, and if I had such a faith that I could move mountains but didn't love others, I would be nothing. Nothing. If I gave everything I have to the poor and even sacrificed my body to the flames, I could boast about it, but if I didn't love others, I would have gained nothing. That's 1 Corinthians 13, 1-3 in the NLT. But I want you to think about this phrase for a second, because I think we pass by it like it's some beautiful poetry, but think about it. How impressive would it be to be able to speak every language on the earth? You could do some great things for the kingdom of God. Every mission agency, right, Jeremiah, would take it. You could go to any people group, and you could write a New Testament for them. No problem. You could translate New Testaments in every language. You could go to every country, every tribe, and you could speak fluently. Wow, that'd be amazing. Or what if you knew all of God's secrets? What if he told you all of his secrets? You would know when he's coming back. If you knew when he's coming back, oh, you could get millions of followers and you could write books. Big money in that. You would know the exact date when the earth was created. You'd know how to cure cancer. You'd be able to identify every conspiracy theory and lie that the media is pumping out. You would know it. Liar, you would say, because you'd have all the knowledge. Or what if you could make things happen like that just by your prayers? You could move mountains by your prayers. They just come true. Everything you asked for came true. Wow. Or what if you could compel everyone to donate all their money to the poor so we could alleviate poverty? People would call you the greatest servant of God that ever walked the face of the earth. You'd be the next Mother Teresa of Calcutta. You would have instant sainthood. This is what the world's been waiting for, all of those things. But Paul says, no, there's something better. There's something even better than that. Not only is it better than that, but you have it at your fingertips if you want to use it. It's an ability that's better than all these things combined. In fact, if these other things compared to it are nothing, is what Paul says. Nothing. That sounds kind of crazy. Something better than all those things? Yeah. And this ability is nothing new. It's been promoted and at our disposal since the laws of Moses brought the Ten Commandments down. It's been there. And all John is doing, we're going to go to 1 John chapter 2, all John is going to do is going to dust off an old command, something that we've always known. And now that Jesus has arrived, and now that if we have faith in Jesus and his life is in us, we should be able to access this ability every single day. And that's what he's going to talk about. It's an old command made new, and we're going to begin in verse 7 of 1 John chapter 2, and we're going to go to verse 11. Here's how it reads. John writes, "Dear friends, my brothers and sisters, I am not writing you a new command, but an old one. You've had it since the beginning. This old command is the message you heard. Yet I'm writing you a new command. Its truth is seen in him and you. Because the darkness is passing, and the true light is already shining. Anyone who claims to be in the light, but hates a brother or a sister, is still in darkness. Anyone who loves their brother and sister lives in the light, and there is nothing in them that makes them stumble. But anyone who hates a brother or sister is in the darkness and walks around in the darkness. They do not know where they're going because the darkness has blinded them." So we read 7 through 11, 5 verses. What is the command? It's an old command. What is the command? Well, it's obvious. It's so obvious that you probably missed it. It's one of those commands that's so churchy, when I say it, it will make you roll your eyes. It's one of those things where, yeah, I've heard it. So what's the command? The command is love one another. I've heard this so many times. Such old news. That's right. It's an old command, and John's going to dust it off and make it new. In fact, this is John's major theme in all of his writings. In the Gospel of John, he talked about love over 57 times. In 1 John, the book that we're going through, he's talked about love over 46 times. Go to 2 John. It's the book right to the right of 1 John. It's the theme of 2 John. Look at 2 John 5 and 6. 2 John 5 and 6 writes, "And now, dear lady, I am not writing you a new command, but one we've had from the beginning." It's always been there. I ask that we love one another. And this is love, that we may walk in obedience to his commands. As you have heard from the beginning, his command is that you walk in love. He even talks about love in 3 John. And so you could say, for John, the command to love is self-evident. It is the it factor in being a Christian. The reason why John is emphasizing here in 1 John is because we said at the very beginning of the series, people at that time were leaving the church. They were leaving the church because they wanted new teachings, these Gnostic teachings, these mystical experiences. They wanted more than just the old, Jesus lived, Jesus died, and he rose again from the grave. You got anything else? They wanted more. They wanted deep insight, higher knowledge. Like Paul said at the very beginning of my message, they wanted to understand God's secrets and have all knowledge. Wouldn't that be cool to have a teacher that could get up here and be so brilliant, you'd just be in awe? They were so smart, so wise, kind of like Rob Bell, but we won't go there. People lose perspective so quickly. They lose perspective so quickly on what's important because our pride leads us astray thinking we are somehow better than others. We somehow deserve to know more, or we do know more. And at the time of this writing, what was happening is that this desire for more was causing people to leave the church and to abandon those that they claimed they once loved. So they could find more, and experience more, and have more. But because for many people, truthfully, for many people, loving one another is so mundane and messy. It's very messy. And that's the problem with this. So John is dusting off the concept of love and asking all of us to once again look closely at it because it should define us. As Paul said, love is really the only thing that matters. And love is the only true identifier of someone who follows Jesus. Not being able to speak all kind of languages and knowing everything. It's love. It's love. I've been meditating on this week. Oh boy, it's bothered me. It's bothered my soul because I am so skimpy when it comes to love. I don't do this well. It's hard. It's hard. And I'd also say, I think the reason why it's hard is because we don't really know what love means anymore. As Dingo Montoya says, I don't think it means what we think it means anymore. Right, Josh? It's one of your favorite movies, right? I bring up movies because I know you like them. And it re-engages Josh. I had to do it in junior high all the time. I'm sorry, Josh. I don't mean to make fun of you. So what he's going to do here, he's going to do two things. First thing he's going to do is talk about the history of love. It's an old command. It's nothing new. And then he's going to talk about the holiness of God, how it should be like the sun, bright, pure, and shining. So let's talk about the history of love. God has always intended for love to be the primary driving force of his people. We've always meant to be different than the culture and the world around us, and that difference has always been to love. Look at verse 7. Dear friends, I'm not writing you a new command, but an old one, which you've had since the beginning. This old command is the message you've heard, yet I'm writing you a new command. Its truth is seen in him and now in you. Because the darkness is passing, and the true light is already shining. So he's going to talk about love as an old command. He's going to talk about love as the new command of Jesus. And now he's going to talk about how love should now be in us. Should be the direction of our life. So in the Old Testament, love was declared in the first commands down from Sinai. Deuteronomy 6:5 talk about how we were to love God above all things. And Leviticus 19 says the outgrowth of this love for God is to love your neighbor as yourself. So when the Pharisees asked Jesus, they asked him in Matthew 22, what's the greatest command? What is the greatest declarative command? Jesus said this, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. The second is like unto it. Or what he means by that, the second is just the natural outgrowth of the first, which is, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So you could say love has been the tale that's as old as time. So Jesus came in a new way, not just to declare it, but to display it. His whole life was love expressed in human skin. Two specific scenes that Jesus has really made bright for us. One, if you go to John, the Gospel of John, I want you to go to John 13. These two specific scenes in John are meant to be the definitive expressions of what love should look like. We can make it complicated, but Jesus just shows us what it looks like. This one is John 13. The first 5 verses. It says this. This is right before Jesus came to the cross to die. It's just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that his hour had come. He's going to leave this world and go back to the Father. So his hour has come. So because this was his last moment, he loved his own who were in the world, and he loved them to the very end, and he's going to express or show how deep his love was for them, starting in verse 2. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, wrapped the towel around his waist, then he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. That's the first expression of love. What is this teaching? That love humbly serves the other. Love is to serve the other. The greater actually got down on his knees to serve the lesser, the disciples. The master is taking care of the servant. This is embarrassing, actually. But it was meant to open our eyes to what love looks like. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But the first thing you can say is love serves others. And then the second thing we expressed here, John 15:13. Greater love has not been shown that a man will lay down his life for his friends. So love doesn't just serve, it sacrifices. Love gives up everything for the good of the other. It's kind of crazy. So we could say from the life of Jesus, love both serves and sacrifices, giving up all for the other. In other words, love one another. Which brings us to now. Now, John says in 1 John that this same love should be in us. And the reason why it should be in us is because in Romans 5 it says that God's love has been shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Spirit who's been given to us. So we're now the distributors of the love that was seen in Jesus. So love declared is the Father's decree. Love displayed is the Son's expression. And love distributed is the Holy Spirit's work in us. We are now to go. Not just go and tell, but go and love. We're distributors of that love. So then John is going to get into the holiness of love. And by holiness, holiness is the expression. Holiness has the idea of the heaviness, but also the beauty and the glory and the light of God expressed. So in the same way rays of sunlight are seen by us, the sunlight of God, S-O-N light of God, is love. The way people see the expression of God is through our love. We are his rays of light. We are to shine. That's what if you go to 1 John 2, verse 8 is all about. The darkness is passing, the true light is already shining. The holiness of God should be seen in us through our love. Shining is a holy thing. It's a pure thing. There's no blemish in light. Listen to 9 through 11. Anyone who claims to be in the light but hates a brother or sister is in darkness. Anyone who loves their brother or sister lives in light. There's nothing in them to make them stumble. But anyone who hates a brother or sister is in the darkness and walks around in darkness. They don't know where they're going. They're blind because darkness has blinded them. So if you don't have love, you are in darkness because love is living in the light. You don't, you're stumbling around like a blind person. And so like a bright light that can't help but shine, love is the holy attribute that just can't help going out into the world and making a difference. It must. Also, I want you to notice something about this passage I just read. By its nature, light has a moral dimension to it. It can't be dark. Meaning, there's no evil associated with the expression of love. Love doesn't hide sin. Love does not shroud the things that are trespassing what God has written in his word. Light is pure. And love should be pure. So, what Paul talks about in Romans is the moral dimension of love. Romans 12, 9 through 10, this is how Paul talks about it. He says, love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourself. This is the moral dimension. So what it means is if you say you love, there must be no deceit, hypocrisy, or self-delusion in love. If you say you love, there's no moral transgression involved with it. And then when you say you love someone, there must not be pride or self-centeredness where you are focused only on you. That's not love. So you could then say, why is this holy aspect of love so needed and so important to understand in our generation? Because the type of love that's being promoted in American culture is dark. It's riddled with darkness. It's full of darkness. And it's not love, nor can it be construed as love. I say it like this: American love, I'm going to call it the progressive secular substitute for Christian love, has turned service and sacrificing everything for others into service and sacrificing everything for the promotion of me. That's American love. Let me say that again. The problem with the progressive secular love is that it's turned service and sacrifice for others into service and sacrifice for me. For me. There's a philosophical term for this. It's everywhere when you read journals, Christian journals. It's called expressive individualism. It's a deep theological term, but you know it like this. You know it in catchphrases. Here's some of them. You be you. You be you. Be true to yourself. Follow your heart. Find yourself. Love is love. Or the popular Christian way of saying this false statement is love wins. Or I just make the rules as I go because I am my own authority. It's called expressive individualism. And it promotes three things that are diametrically opposed to what Paul wrote here, the moral side of love. The first one about expressive individualism, it promotes that the highest good in life is my freedom, my happiness, self-definition and self-expression. I'm just being me. It's exactly the opposite of honor one another above yourself. The second part of expressive individualism is that any tradition, any religion, any regulation, any social tie that restricts my freedom needs to kind of be destroyed, deconstructed, or at least reshaped a little bit so I can be me. I can do me. And then the third quality of this is the primary moral ethic of self-love is tolerance now, is the moral high ground. It's just to be tolerant. So everyone's self-quest cannot be denied. Everyone's individual freedom cannot be argued against. Any deviation from tolerance is not tolerated. So it eats itself. So if you're not supposed to, you're supposed to tolerate, that means you're intolerant. And I have no tolerance for your intolerance. It's a negative, it doesn't work. It's baloney, is what it is. It's baloney. And that's the highest ethic we have. The biggest problem with tolerance is that darkness is now to be embraced and celebrated as light when it isn't. It's darkness. If I think my behavior is okay in our culture, that's all that matters. Who cares what God and others think? And so instead of reaching out like rays of sun, this philosophy of expressive individualism has turned people in on themselves and focused their needs only on me and what I need. So instead of love one another, it really has turned to love me. Love me. And this obsessive self-love has created a world of people, what I'd say, living in miser boxes. Everybody's living in a miser box. Do you live in a miser box? Like, what is a miser box? Let me explain it. The first word miser is a person who hoards things for himself. Doesn't really let people in. Becomes very private in his dealings. So when a person lives like a miser, they feel they have the right to hoard those things for themselves. What are those things? Anything from my personal resources, my time, my money, my emotions, my love, my kindness, my compassion, my energy, and even my concern for those around me, because really everything is about me being happy. And if I'm not happy, I don't have to be kind. I can vent. I can unload. I need to find my self-actualization first before I reach out to others. So if you notice, the focus is always on my needs being met. And my feelings always being validated. We use a lot of words for miserly behavior. We use words like self-care, me time. I need my me time, and now it's becoming all the time. I need to find my happy place. Needs a little bit of pampering, demand my rights, retain my agency, and the professional way to say this is it's just simply narcissistic antisocial behavior, basically. What is a box? And this is where it gets really personal. So a box is a defined perimeter which has self-defined and justified these walls that I have, like a French mimer. I put these walls up. I can't see them, but they're there. And I made them, to pull that rope. Enough of that. So it's a self-defined perimeter. And I keep people out. And I keep them out and I usually determine my walls by my past hurts and my prejudices, often born from a political ideology. And so, like plexiglass, we can't see the walls, but we can feel them, and you got them. This box is nothing but my perceived threat assessment. I determine who I can and cannot relate to. I am the gatekeeper of my own reality. I know of people who feel justified in demonizing a whole identity group, a whole gender, a whole political party, a whole race or religious group, so they feel justified in shutting them out. Maintaining the perimeter is just fine because I need my safe space. And I just cannot let some things in this world enter my box because they might trigger me, and you don't want me triggered. So, in Jesus' day, the Jews had their boxes. They wouldn't associate with Gentiles. They wouldn't associate with those they deemed unclean. Romans had their boxes. They wouldn't associate with Jews. Pharisees had their boxes. They wouldn't talk to tax collectors and sinners. And so that is why the story of Jesus and the towel and washing the feet is so shocking. He went past his accepted perimeters and broke the walls of his miser box. He embarrassed himself by getting on his knees and serving those he deemed less than himself. He's like a bright sun shattering the walls. He purposely lowered himself for the sake of others, but a miser, they'll never leave their box. Let me give you two stories. And the first story is something in my past, and the second story is something in the now. And the second story might make people mad, so I'm going to start with the first story. Okay, so the first story, I often tell you stories about me, but this has changed who I am. So I was raised in Cleveland. I have 4 sisters, a brother, and my mom and dad. And we would often, twice a year, drive 2 hours southeast in Ohio, which would be the central eastern part of Ohio, to visit my cousins in Perrysville, Ohio. We called it Peeville because it's a very small little town in the middle of the country in the hilly part of Ohio. So we would drive in our paneled station wagon. We'd push everybody in there. All these kids are in there, and we go visit our cousins, my mom's sister's kids. There's 8 of them. And we go visit them. Now, they're a little bit different than we were. Our cousins were a little bit different. We were more from the city, suburbs. We played sports. We were outside all the time. My cousins were the kind of people that liked Atari Pong, would do coding on basic code. They would watch Doctor Who, Battlestar Galactica. They would read in the basement. They'd have white skin. They rarely went outside. That's my cousin from Perrysville. So when we would drive there, we would go through the hills, and when we were outside of Perrysville, about 3 miles outside of Perrysville, there's always this really big hill. I'll never forget it. My mind just works like that. I'll never forget it. My dad would park on top of this hill, put the station wagon in neutral, and then coast down this hill. So we'd coast down this hill, and it was a really long hill. But it would always come to a stop at this 4-way stop. On this corner, I can see it very vividly, there was a big cow pasture, and there was always one cow chewing on grass over here. My dad would roll down the window and yell to the cow, "Hey, do you know where Perrysville is?" And he thought he was so funny with our kids. Then we go, "Dad, will you just stop it?" And then he would then roll the window back up. He'd take his arm and look back at us, and he goes, "Now listen, I want you guys to get to know your cousins. You start the conversations. You think of the games. Get them outside. I'll get a capture the flag going. I want you to initiate. I want you to get to know your cousins." We went there, and I'm telling you, we did what my dad said. And we had a great time. We eventually played capture the flags, Weeks versus Webbers, and it was a lot of fun. And we left, and we go back down that same road, he'd stop at that same four-way intersection and say goodbye to the cow. And then he'd drive up the road, he'd look back, and he'd say this, I'm really proud of you guys. You didn't have to, but you did what I asked. Thank you for being a friend to your cousins. And I'm telling you, it changed me. I think, like really, you guys don't really realize, but by nature, I am an introvert. You probably wouldn't believe that. I am. I really am. I would rather go into a cabin and read 20 books than engage people. I really would. But I've learned I've got to break my walls and meet people. I have to. That's my job. I'm a Christian. Jesus broke the walls of heaven to come see me. But we're stuck in these little walls, which brings me to prayer group. I want to talk about the prayer group. I love the prayer group. It's every Tuesday night, and it's kind of amazing, actually. When it first started, it was hard to pray. It's hard to get up. All we have is a mic, and people share their prayers and encourage one another with Scripture and what God's been telling them. And at first, it was really tough. It's hard for people to get up and share. And so, of course, Chris, you're the pastor. Go share. Okay, I'll go share. I'll do it. But it always bothers me. Why is it so hard to share with other people in the church? I don't get it. Even this last week, it was great, but there's this, people are scared. What are you scared? These people are your brothers and sisters in Christ. It's sort of like, I'll explain it to you like this, like they're people we're going to be in heaven with. But when we're in heaven, it's almost like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to share. They're your brothers and sisters in Christ. Why can't we just encourage one another? It's easy. It's simple, but ooh, people might judge me. I got to put this by. I can't reach out. Why not? Oh, it's scary out there. What's scary? Loving people? Why is it so hard to share your heart with people that Jesus died for? I don't get it. It's strange to me. Love is meant to break out. And it's supposed to break out like radiation escapes from a blown-up nuclear facility. It should start emanating. First, the core should start in your home, the people that you rub shoulders with. And you don't love your family by putting pictures on Facebook saying, aren't we a great family? And you go home and you never talk to them? Like, what is that? Why do we do that? Aren't we a great family? We all wear the same clothes. Yeah, but at home you don't talk to anybody. You don't forgive each other. You just rip on each other. And then it's supposed to go to your friends. Do you call them your colleagues? Do you listen to your colleagues, your neighbors, your enemies? And then activism should be last. Why is activism always first? Because it's easy to love people you know nothing about and you don't share a house with. And you want to seem so cool how you love. First, love the people in your house. Let me give you 3 scenarios. The first one is in your home, mom and dad. I know you serve your kids, but on whose time? On whose time? Your time or their time? And kids, do you even serve your mom and dad? Do you? Why is that too much to ask? I just don't get it. Church, and you've probably heard me say this a lot, but what's really kind of weird to me is I love talking to people afterwards. I think it's easy to talk to the pastor for 2 reasons. The pastor, when I preach, you kind of feel like you know me because I tell you stories, but also a pastor's not supposed to judge you, so you can tell me anything you want. But while people are waiting to talk to the pastor, everybody's kind of in line and they have that cone of silence. You ever watch Get Smart? The cone of silence? So they're waiting for me, but everybody's in their cone of silence. I can't talk to the other person. Why not? I don't know. I don't know. And then they wait for me some more. I can't talk to them. I got a cone of silence. And then when they come to me, the cone of silence goes down. Hey, how you doing? Good. I'm having a bad day. And then you're done talking to Pat. Cone of silence goes back on. Don't talk to anybody. It's what heaven's going to be like. Everybody's going to have a cone of silence. Here's some fruit from the tree of good and evil. I'll just take it. You know, like what? Why? Why can't we just talk to people? Why can't we? I don't get it. I just don't want to talk to anybody. I don't like people. In the first service, I don't mean to rip on Ken, but we were talking about, I'm not going to rip on Ken, but we were talking about how we need volunteers for the soccer camp. Because there's some people that love kids, love being coaches, love teaching kids, but then there's some people that don't like kids. I think he was referring to himself. I don't know. He said, but we even have places for people that don't like kids, you know, and it's funny and all that. But why don't we like kids? Why don't we like kids? We were kids once. I had a guy, when I was in 3rd grade, I started playing flag football. I had this coach, he didn't know what he was doing. He really didn't. He just smoked this cherry pipe, Dan. It was like cherry pipe. Smelled really good. Dan's like, why are you talking to me? I don't know, Dan. You look like you should be. Anyhow, this guy knew nothing about football, but he came up to me before our first game, put his arm around me, and goes, you're a really good player. Keep it up. That guy encouraged me. He cared about a kid. Why can't we do that to people? I don't know. I hate these boxes. I've got them. There's a lot of times I don't want to get out of myself. It's weird. It's weird. And then the third group, so I talked about home church. Here's a question for you when it comes to the world. Here's a question. Are people who are part of the LGBTQ plus part of the LGBTQ plus because they want to make you mad? Is that why they're that way? Or are they that way because there's some serious stuff going on in their life and their heart, and they probably need somebody to listen to them? Not think they have cooties. Not get angry with the fist. How dare you make me use your pronoun, you rotten no. Can you listen to them? Love them? Why? Why must we love like this? Why must we break out of our miser boxes? Because I don't like it. I don't like it. It's hard. But why? Because they'll know you're Christians by your love? Think about this a second. Who in your mind, I want you just to take 1 second, who in your brain is one of the strongest Christians you've ever met? So when I ask you that, just think about a name that comes up. You can write it down or just think about it. Who is one of the strongest Christians you've ever met? Have it in there. Put it in there. Derek Max. Okay, I got it in there. Put that in there. Now, ask this question. Why did you pick them? Is it because they know a lot of Bible verses? Is it because they can tell you the differences between Calvinism and Arminianism? Is it because they've got 17 Bibles on their shelf? I know they wear a tie to church. Yes, they tithe the most. Why do you have them down? I guarantee you 10 out of 10 times because they love you. It's because they love you. They're patient, kind, keep no record of wrongs. They believe in you. They hope, perseveres, and it never fails. Now, when you meet someone like that, that person changes the world. Change you. We are meant to get out of our boxes. And we are meant to love one another. And I say this knowing I have to love people this afternoon. I'm not sure I want to, but I do.